I almost couldn't believe myself that I was almost on the top once.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Tennis, unlike most other sports, is decided by the tiniest of margins, and it is these margins that make up not only the most beautiful, but also the most tragic stories you'll ever see. No other active player better exemplifies a tragic career of what could have been than Dominic Thiem. What really happened to him? Thiem's entire life has been mostly about tennis. Both of his parents were tennis coaches, so it wasn't surprising to see him pick up the racket at a very tender age. He followed that up with impressive performances in junior circuit, becoming the world number 2 before turning pro in 2011. However, his senior career didn't get off to a quick start like the likes of Alcaraz, Nadal, and Holger Rune, because it took Thiem 3 years after turning pro to reach his first ATP final in 2014, and that was the year he broke into the top 100. With 3 more ATP titles coming the following year, Thiem broke into the top 20 at the age of 22. 2016 was the year that everything would change.
First ATP 500.
Thiem had now reached a Masters 1000 final, defeated Nadal in Rome, Djokovic at the French Open, and was now the world number 4. He was on a roll, and at this point, you could sense that the big three now had a genuine threat to their dynasty. By 2018, Thiem was the man. He ended Rafael Nadal's 50-set winning streak on clay and made the French Open final.
Dominic Thiem produces an absolute masterclass.
By the time he finally got his hands on a Masters 1000 title and defeated Djokovic at the French Open for the second time to reach his second Grand Slam final, it was clear that Thiem had become the Prince of Clay. Dominic was dominating. Thiem reached the final of the 2019 ATP Finals, even defeating Novak on hardcourt, and at this point, it was a question of when, not if, for a Grand Slam title. Luckily, we didn't have to wait too long, because in 2020, Dominic Thiem finally won a Grand Slam in sensational fashion at the 4th time of asking. Earlier, in the pandemic-shortened season, he had ousted Roger Federer from the 3rd spot after reaching the Australian Open final, which he lost to Djokovic in 5 sets. Even when the tour was suspended, the Austrian competed in several exhibition events. At the US Open, Thiem defeated Marin Cilic, Felix Auger, Alex de Minaur, and Daniel Medvedev en route to the final, where he had to come back from 2 sets down and a breakdown in the 3rd set to steal the title from Alexander Zverev. It was only the 5th time in the Open era that such a remarkable comeback would happen. Thiem had also become the first male player born in the 90s to win a major title. Dominic's heavy ground strokes and intensity were the major talking points in his successful gameplay. Even when most players were asked to describe Thiem in one word, here's what they had to say.
Powerful. Powerful.
Powerful. Power.
Later that year, he reached 300 ATP match wins with his 5th win over Novak Djokovic. A well-deserved award for the Austrian Sportsman of the Year followed, and the glory days had finally arrived, or so it seemed, because no one saw what was coming next for the champ. Only a few months after breaking the Big Three stranglehold on Grand Slam titles, Thiem suffered a debilitating wrist injury on June 26, 2021. But even before then, he had been struggling to find his blistering form of the previous year, with early round losses in tournaments, particularly a first-round French Open loss to Pablo Andújar. After battling with a foot injury that kept his performances average all year, it was the wrist that would deliver the lethal blow. Initially, Thiem was expected to recover between 4 to 6 weeks, but those quickly turned into several months of despair. Thiem's wrist injury kept him out of the circuit for the rest of the year, and as a result, he fell off the radar. Just like that, the 2020 US Open champion faded into oblivion. The former world number 3 missed the early part of the 2022 season as he continued to recover from his injury. Thiem returned to action and played at the Challenger event in Marbella, but quickly lost in the first round to Pedro Gachin. Expectations were low anyway, so it wasn't too surprising. And after he lost to John Millman at the Serbia Open, there were encouraging signs since we were able to see him last 2.5 hours in a match, but after early losses at Estoril, Madrid, Rome and Geneva, it became clear that he hadn't quite gotten to the level we had imagined, even if most fans and players were rooting for him. Unable to defend his points from the previous year, Thiem fell out of the top 300. One of the 2-time Roland Garros finalists' lowest lows was his first round loss to 87th-ranked Bolivian player Hugo Dellien in straight sets at the 22 French Open. It took Thiem 14 good months to register his first win at any level after he beat Filip Misalic at a challenger event in Austria, and a first ATP win after beating Emil Ruusuvuori at a first round of the Swedish Open. And what followed were encouraging results, with a 22-11 winning tally after finding his first wins, 2 semi-final appearances at 250 events, and 3 wins against top 20 players. This allowed him to make it back to the top 100, but it was clear that the team who left wasn't the one who had returned. The clay court specialist was struggling to win matches even on the Challenger Tour. 2023, Thiem has played in 10 tournaments so far, but he has lost in the first round of most of them. A glance at his performances this year leaves a cause for concern because he has consistently lost to low-ranked players whom he should be winning normally. Although one of his best performances this year was against Richard Gasquet in the round of 64 at Monte Carlo, he hasn't been able to back it up. Which other player does Dominic Thiem's career remind you of? Juan Martín del Potro? Probably because they both won a Grand Slam title. We expected more. And then boom, a wrist injury messed everything up. But for Thiem, there was a deeper problem. Really, we can trace the former world number 3's problems to his most glorious moment when he won the 2020 US Open. Despite finally winning what he had worked for his whole life, Thiem admitted that the fire in him went out. Perhaps his glory moment was not as loud as he might have expected with 20,000 empty seats in the stadium at the time. It took him a while to accept that he was a champion, and after that, he just couldn't reproduce the same performances. At first, he didn't know why his shots were missing power and were no longer pinpoint accurate. Unlike champions such as Stan Wawrinka and Andy Murray, who got hungrier and won more titles after getting their breakthrough, Thiem struggled for motivation after getting his major. According to him, his preparations fell in a hole after he got what he had been pursuing for 15 years. Injuries did a lot of damage, but we have to accept that as a normal occurrence in a player's career. Thiem sacrificed all he had just to get to the top to fulfill the narrative of disrupting the Big Three. Just look at his head-to-head with the Big Three: 6-9 against Nadal, 5-7 against Djokovic, and 5-2 against Federer. Thiem was out of this world in his prime. Now exhausted and spent, he just might not have it in him to start another fresh climb back to the top following his recovery. Andy Murray believes it is a really complex situation, with mental struggles being the major problem, but what are your thoughts? Is it safe to assume that his problem is more mental than physical? Thiem's belief might be stronger, even stronger than his body, but it might not be enough to earn him another major title. Although he is still a champion on and off the court, it is really hard to see him break into the top 10 again because Thiem is a shadow of his former self. Poor play, poor results, with occasional moments where you feel he might be getting back to his normal level. Thiem's comeback has been on for over a year, and it's now beginning to look ugly with way too many losses, not much confidence, and we are seeing a once aggressive hard hitter now being defensive. Is there something going on at the practice courts or at the gym? What do you reckon? If there are no physical issues, why isn't he attempting to produce powerful attacking shots often, even if he makes mistakes while trying? It's hard to say where the Austrian goes from here, but it will be up to him. The clay season may offer him some salvation, but for now, it's just a waiting game. We just have to wait and see if hope turns to despair, indifference, or ultimate satisfaction. Dominic Thiem's career may very well go down as one of the biggest cases of what could have been. At the moment, his game is becoming painful to watch. Where are those big heavy forehands? With the 30th birthday not far away, Thiem doesn't have all the time in the world to get back to the top. But you know what? Even if he doesn't eventually turn his fortunes around, he has already had a career that most players can only dream of. Another player fans want to know what happened to is Andy Murray, so check out this next video to find out.